How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Debate Night. We are back with some exciting topics and some great guests as well. We got the man of the people back because he was not here with us last week.
Yeah, man of the people was gone, but the people's champ was here. Apparently, Gary had an all-time episode last week.
People were gassing him.
Yeah, I mean the comments were insane. Some of them were Gary's the people's champ now. I had top comment a few debate nights ago about how overrated Too Hot Geese were. So I guess he went in on them.
He did, yeah.
And people love that. And then someone else said Gary just letting it rip this week. So I don't know if it's like if I'm gone, Gary has to take over for just going after people.
No, it was the trophy thing. He ranted pretty hard about it.
Love seeing it. Love seeing it from my guy, Gary.
Yeah, Gary got after it. Hunter also coming off a week's rest. Fresh as can be.
Not rest. I'm coming off a week of not being on the show. No rest to be had.
No, you're rested. Your debate night rested.
Sure. Yeah.
Your takes are rested.
My takes are rested.
Yeah.
Apparently, I've also heard, because whenever you're polarizing on this show, you are what you are. You're polarizing. Because I've also had people DMing me telling me that Gary needs to take his takes to another show. I won't say which one. That's apparently very hot take and TMZ ridden. It's not a foundation show. And they're like, that belongs over there. He doesn't need that mess on debate night. I've gotten that like 3 or 4 times. So
what did he say last week?
I don't know.
What
apparently
happened?
they weren't feeling that in the
comment
comment section, but people were coming after him in my DMs for whatever reason. I don't know why that's where you send it. It was like they were like trying to like let the boss know to fire him. He doesn't work for me.
Well, that's
that
like when people send stuff into like their sponsor to be like, hey, you guys sponsor this guy.
That's basically what was going on.
It wasn't even that crazy.
You know what? It was probably someone who like made the trophy was messaging. Actually, I know who made the trophy. It wasn't them, but
I'm sure. Yeah, I was
gonna
say I'm sure they have some fans out there, and like if anyone, it's just one of those things. You know, someone talks bad about you, everyone just gets up in arms.
It's funny. Dustin's back with us. Been a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds like a bunch of soft people out there from what I can tell from all the chatter that we got going on. But, you know, every now and then I just got to come back and remind them that I still exist and I still got it. So, you know, here I am after a little bit of time off.
Lightning as well.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Watch out for lightning. Hashtag lightning kills.
And then Moses rounding out the cast today, finally back in his home. He's been on the road on the show.
Been on the road. Yeah, I was about 5 minutes looking for a can of beans in my pantry before this, just so I could show that off in support of Ezra. Couldn't find one, but be talking about them here in a little bit.
Yeah, guys, I got really bad news for you on that front. I was just telling Silas, if anybody thinks, and I did like an Ezra diet a couple years ago for funsies, but if anybody thinks they're even remotely consuming the amount of beans that Ezra consumes to get that build, you cannot do it. You can't. I asked him about it. He gets 180 grams of protein a day from beans, and if you know the bean macros, like that's a stupid amount of beans.
They said he was eating like 8 cups of beans a serving.
Yeah, like how is he even alive? I don't even know. He's truly a myth. He's truly.
I like food, man. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, chicken's there. Chicken's an option. All right, let's get into our topics. Yeah, might have to get him on the show just to debate dieting. First topic.
I don't think he would debate. I don't think he'd back it up. I think he would just be like, no, it doesn't work for most people. It just work for me.
Yeah, no, you're probably right.
No, he's heavily into the plant protein.
But I'm saying the beans. Is he saying like everyone should eat how he eats, or it's just like that's what works? Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
like there's apparently a heat map. I need him to show it to me. There's apparently a heat map that shows either like the healthiest or the people that live the longest.
Yeah, they eat beans.
And it's just very heavy plant people. Like they just eat plants. And also then he started going into the biology of humans and how our mouths and jaws are shaped to eat plants and not to eat. He will talk.
I saw him eat a chicken sandwich. There I said it. Yeah, I saw him eat a chicken sandwich on that very trip.
Maybe that's what he needed. Maybe he needed actually some meat to finally win.
Good point.
Hey, Eagle McMahon did it. So I'm
It's
just saying.
true.
I saw Eagle
Well,
McMahon was on a steak
I think it was the
battle
opposite
other day.
effect on Eagle.
Yeah,
but-
Unfortunately.
Eagles trending not in the right direction. I don't think.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about somebody that is trending in the right direction. Cadence Burge. So she's now entered her name onto the list of promising young one-time FPO Pro Tour winners, joining names like Emily Weatherman, Kat Murch, and Kona Panis. Is there anything that leads you to believe she'll rise to the hype more than those others and become a star in the division? Obviously, we've seen this story before, but she has been playing well. Brodie, what do you think?
So after playing this past weekend, it's been a hot minute since I've done so. I kind of checked back. I think it was like almost a year since the last time I played on tour. And I must have said this 5 or 6 times. This is a putting contest. This is a putting contest. Like that is what disc golf currently is set up. It is a putting contest. Playing with people, watching them play, and playing myself. If you putt well, you're going to score well. Point blank. And Cadence right now is proving to be one of the better putters inside of the circle on the FPO. She went 11 for 11 round 1, 12 for 13 round 2, and 8 for 10 in round 3. Two of those misses, her 2 misses in round 3 was that 3 putt that she had on hole number 12. So I think the hype is completely warranted. Also, if you go and look at her last 3 events, she hasn't finished outside the top 3. Finishing 3rd, second at a major, and then obviously winning this one. I think what she's showing right now is she's becoming a very consistent player, and she's able to handle the pressure at her age. I wouldn't say she's handling the pressure well, because we have seen her crack a little bit, and she did crack a little bit in that final round, but she's doing it pretty much better than anyone at her age, right? The things that I need to see from her now is, can she keep improving? Right? She has to keep getting better from C2, more distance off the team, and she has to develop a forehand, because some of those shots that she was throwing that final round would have been a lot easier had she had a forehand.
Yeah, certainly seems to be the hole in her game right now. Hunter, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, when you list the names among them, I agree with the list she's on, we'll say, but I think there's one glaring difference, which is the putt, as Brodie alluded to. I mean, when we look at the players you listed where they're currently putting, none of them are even in the same realm. Kat Murch is the closest, but her Circle 2 putt struggles. Cadence is one of the best putters in the world, period. I mean, if you look at her, really, when you combine Circle 1 and Circle 2, in my opinion, there's only 2 names better than her, and that's Owen Scoggins and Silva Saarinen. Cadence Burge is 4th best in FPO this season in Circle 1X putting. She's 5th best in FPO in Circle 2 putting. There's very few that are that high up on those lists. And when you look at Owen and Silva, Owen, obviously what's holding her back is just as she's gotten older, her distance hasn't allowed her to be as consistent, versus Silva. We're also seeing, Silva, we're also seeing her breakout arc kind of going up. I think that also a key thing that Brodie brought up is she has a lot of room for improvement. Cadence does. She has a phenomenal backhand, like we've seen with the likes of Silva Saarinen, and able to win without a forehand means there is that room to build out her game. When we've seen other players such as Kat Murch, Emily Weatherman, Kona Panis, they were kind of as fully developed as they ever got to. Could that happen with Cadence? Sure, but we saw them a lot of times with a forehand, with a backhand, and their putt dialed. Cadence left a lot of room out there. I mean, even on day 2, she threw OB and had a putt from there. On the final day, she messed up on that 12 to 14 hole stretch. There was plenty of strokes out there, so her ceiling is way higher, in my opinion, than some of the other one-time winners. Those felt a little flukier. I think Emily Weatherman from that list, honestly, might be the one that has the ceiling to get back there. Kat Murch, we know what she is. Kona, we know what she is. And Cadence, I think we know what she is, and it's a future star.
Okay, Dustin, are you in agreement? Future star?
Yeah, she's certainly doing really well. I mean, I think people have to realize this is really only her 2nd year fully on tour. So she has only had a little bit of experience. It still has a lot to gain. And when you look at where she started, you know, she wasn't that great putting, and she really wasn't that great in hitting the circles regulation either. Everyone's mentioning putting stats, and those are indeed important, but she was only getting Circle 2 in regulation 16% of the time her first season, and C1 only about 20% of the time. Yeah, her C1X putting was like 70%. So it was kind of average at best, but we've seen her progressively getting better. You just look at her finishes this season: 10th at Waco, 5th at Music City Open, 2nd at Kansas City Wide Open, and then 3rd at Preserve, and now 2nd at US Women's, and now a win. So we're seeing the progression there. Now she's doubled her values and hitting C1 and C2 in regulation. So she's throwing the disc better. We can see she has a clean backhand and good shot shaping. She has above average distance for the FPO field. And yeah, now her putting is in the top 5 in both C1X and C2. Like, she's increased her C1 putting by 10% over the last 2 seasons. Like, that is pretty remarkable when you really think about it. So she also is now showing then that she has the want to grind, the want to practice, the want to get better, the killer instinct to want to do things. And while she may have had some mess ups here and there, she piped it on 17 18 when she needed to during the final round to get the job done. So I definitely think she has a lot going for her. I would compare her to the Emily Weatherman. Emily also hasn't been on tour for very long. She's got a good backhand, but I think Caden's backhand is better. She throws further and she's a better putter. So when I look at all of those values, I think she's definitely one to keep an eye on, as well as Taylor Chosick, because she's just a super athlete.
Okay. Yeah. Moses, do you think she separates herself from those names, or are we getting a little overexcited?
No, I mean, I think she absolutely separates herself from those names. And I think one thing to consider as well is age in this situation. She's 18 years old. Emily Weatherman, given, was 18 years old when she won on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. But I think we talk about ceilings and, everything else. Like, there's no ceiling at this age. Like, they can still become much better players. It's the amount of effort that they're putting into. And I think whereas, Cadence has increased in those different statistics, in those putting stats, it's a clear sign that she is willing to grind and actually increase her ceiling, And I really think, as Brodie said, like, her consistency is by far the most impressive thing about her. This isn't a flash in the pan. She is a consistent top 10 FPO player this year. Obviously with the Europeans out of the field, that may be arguable. I think she's probably closer to top 15, I would say. But a lot of that is due to her putting and how much she has improved in those statistics. She kind of has that fast, aggressive spin putt that you've seen. And I think a lot of that is down to her being kind of a momentum player. Sometimes we see that with spin putters in particular. And I think she has handled her emotions fairly well in that instance as well. Like, we saw her lose those 4 strokes across the 3 holes in the final 9, clearly upset. She was crying. But she bounced back with 3 birdies on the final 4 holes. And that's what I think that really was a result of, was just nerves. And I think that those holes she missed was down to the fact that this was her first Disc Golf Pro Tour where she, is probably going to win or, starts the final round with the lead. And I think that's a huge aspect of it.
Yeah. Can I add something, Trevor?
Yeah.
I just got to give a shout out to our guy, Robbie C, because someone that he's caddied for me before. So I kind of have an idea of how he caddies. I think his personality and the way he caddies, I think, is an absolute advantage for Cadence to have on her bag. I think if he's not on the bag there, that stretch of 12 through 14, I think she doesn't get out of her head. I think she makes more mistakes and she loses the tournament. I think he did a great job. And I think this is what shows, especially to younger players out there, having someone on your bag, having another perspective, out there to kind of get you out of your mental thoughts that might be bad could be super, super advantageous to you. So shout out to Robbie C. And I know he's caddied for her a couple times this season. I don't know if he's done a full event or has caddied like in the final round as he did here, but it was awesome to see them working together down that stretch.
I think they're from the same area, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, they probably know each other pretty well.
He also caddied Sully to a 4th place finish, and he played doubles with Ezra, helping him practice, led to a win. It was Robbie C weekend.
That guy,
Wow.
that guy was all over the winner's circle.
He had a
What
heck
a
of a
weekend.
weekend.
Holy smokes. Yeah. Shout out Robbie C. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about how things finished up, because obviously there's another player to really discuss here, Holland Hanley. So I want to know, do you agree with Holland's decision to attack the green on 18? Obviously, for those of you who didn't watch, she decided to play aggressively, go for the birdie, guarantee herself a win instead of playing easily for par and going to a playoff. So do you agree with this decision to attack the green? And what do you think ultimately impacted her choice to play it aggressively instead of playing for that layup and just kind of taking things to an extra hole, Hunter?
I fully agree with her decision to play aggressively. I fully disagree with her shot selection to play aggressively. I think that where she was at, it honestly played into her favor. Obviously, her position didn't, but having to have Cadence go first, all the pressure's on Cadence, because if Cadence messes up, then Holland could do whatever she wants and still win. Once Cadence capitalize and it's close, Holland now knows exactly what's required. Get him out for a birdie, I win, take a par, we go to a playoff. in my opinion, the shot there is a backhand turnover, the high force over backhand turnover. And I know people are saying a lot of them had flexed out left. That's the risk. But in her situation, she can take par and still go to a playoff. So there is no I'm trying to park it. You're trying to blast it over, get it over to those woods, because then you can pitch out and have a par if you need to. But the key here is you got to give yourself a look and you got to make the mistake right. Those are two things that I think are very hard to do with the forehand, which is what she chose to go with. In order for the forehand to be close, she was going to have to push it either super high in the air, which I don't think she had the power for, or she was going to have to push it super close to the Mando tree, which is what I think she was trying to do, which obviously got in her head and resulted in the yank to the left. And that left her OB way up the fairway, where now she has to try to throw it in, but there's no real chance of it going in unless it's like a holy shot situation. So I agree with the decision to play aggressive. I like taking it into your own hands, taking the tournament there instead of trying to go to a playoff and, you know, worrying with momentum and all that fun stuff. I agree with the decision. I fully disagree with the shot selection. That's a backhand turnover all day.
Okay, Dustin, do you agree? Are you in the same boat?
I agree that going for the win makes sense there. I mean, she has a 1-stroke lead. She doesn't want to chance this going to a playoff, in my opinion. Though I do think she would have had the edge in the playoffs. She's used to being in those situations more often. She's got more wins, more experience. She might have been able to do it. But I also think there's something to be said about when Cadence pipes the drive and she just parks the approach shot. It's like, all right, she's gonna birdie the hole. So I have to birdie this hole if I want to win now. Otherwise, we're going to a playoff. And look, whenever we're taking a look at what she actually decided to do, I don't have the experience of having been in the spot that she's in standing at to know what it looks like. But based on what I saw, I don't think Holland doesn't have the forehand capable of executing what she was trying to do. I think she does. I think that if she would have had a little bit less driven on a little bit more angle, I think that she could have kept the forehand inbounds. And I think that she would have at least had some type of outside circle to look to get the birdie. And then if not, okay, you missed that putt, you take a par and you do wind up going to the playoff anywhere, where I do think you have the experience. And she had the hotter round. She had the cleaner back nine. Like, she was playing better golf. So I think if it goes extra holes, you're going to give her the edge. But as far as going for it, I like the killer instinct to go for the win there and then. And because the thing is, what if you mess up a layup and then you have to lay up again and then you want it screwing yourself? Like, at least there, you took it into your own hands. You threw the shot you thought was best and you were confident in, and it just didn't work out. I think she's capable of throwing that forehand, though. I think if you put her there, let her do it multiple times, she is going to, you know, more often than not, get it where it needs to be to at least have a run at it.
Yeah, certainly. I think most people didn't have a problem with going for it. Moses, do you think this was a situation she should have folded?
I think it was a silly decision. And I think the shot selection obviously was not the best. I mean, she admitted in her Instagram post she threw the wrong disc in that situation. Should have thrown a slower, more overstable disc, which, I mean, to Hunter's point, if you don't think she has the power, she was talking about she should have thrown a swarm. I mean, if she's getting there with a swarm, she can get there with anything else. She said she threw a raptor in this situation. But I think a lot of that stemmed from the fact that she was so hot in that final round. I mean, she started 9 down through the first 11 holes, which was incredible. She sees Cadence throw what we have to admit was a fantastic backhand turnover. I mean, that shot was as clutch as it gets on the final hole. And a point that I think is important to understand is she saw Rebecca Cox throw before her, who threw it too low and immediately threw it out of bounds. And I mean, that shot that Holland has, you have to throw it high, especially with as pinched as she was around the corner. You have to throw that shot high. And she did not do that at all. She just juiced it straight OB. And I think a lot of that came from the aggressive play, came from the fact that she was excelling throughout that round. But I really have to say, I mean, as Dustin said, it would expect her to win in a playoff. I mean, she is the proven winner here on tour. I mean, obviously Cadence was going through a lot of emotions in that final round. To not at least give yourself a chance to continue, that's my biggest issue with this, is don't throw yourself out of the tournament. And that's exactly what she did. You know, and against this young, unproven competitor, I would give her the advantage in the playoff, and she didn't give herself that opportunity. I think she wanted to keep it in her hands, but yeah, I mean, she just threw it away.
Yeah, brutal to go from having the upper hand to all of a sudden within one shot, not even having any sort of chance. Brodie, do you think she made the right choice? Should she have maybe just laid it up? Is this an issue of maturity, or what was the move there?
Well, I think a lot of these guys said some pretty good points, but I think they left out a couple things. And, you know, I harp on this all the time. Wow, I'm blanking on the word.
Course maintenance.
Time.
I was going to say course maintenance, but that's not the actual word I'm looking for. Where you're having to make decisions.
Management.
Management.
Thank you. Course management. The other M word. thanks to the people out at that course, because I think a lot of the changes they had were awesome. And I think we saw that on hole 18. The fact that they created a Mando on that tree, not only was that great for spectators to be able to go between hole 18 and hole 5, that was a great spot for them. But if that Mando wasn't there, Holland goes right. Holland throws a backhand, not even anywhere near OB, down the right-hand side. We're not even discussing this. The other thing, too, is they cut the OB in on the left side drastically. That OB used to not be anywhere near that Mando tree and swung out quite a bit, where you got up there. It was, I think, 20 feet left of the basket. It was very, very tight. And so I think that ultimately was her demise, was she had to throw a shot, like Hunter was saying, that her miss was in the trees on the right. I don't love that you can do that on that hole. That's something that I wish they put hazard there to make that shot even more difficult in the future. But her big mistake here was that if she threw a bad shot, it was going OB and she had no chance for a playoff. She had to throw a shot that was going to finish right, whether that's the big turnover backhand with a roller disc, whether that's a super high stall shot similar to the shot that she threw on hole number 6 earlier in the round. The miss there has to be in the woods, short, right of the basket. That's the miss. It didn't happen for her. And unfortunately, Cadence threw a great shot and forced her hand, and she just wasn't able to pull it off.
Yeah, it's certainly one that you got to be kicking yourself, because in hindsight, I'm sure it's so easy to think I could have thrown like any other shot than that one and at least given it a chance to go into the woods, or OB long, even if you go with the backhand and it flexes out, like somewhere where she gives herself a putt. I mean, going out of bounds that early, I wonder if it didn't even cross her mind that was going to be a problem. Like, because it really was like, it's crazy that it never even had a chance because it went out so early.
It kind of goes back to how a lot of players and pros do this too, because there isn't course management usually, that all of a sudden when you get into a spot where you actually need to have it, of where you need to be thinking, hey, I need to miss this right of the basket short. So many players, pros, AMs, all above, they have like this locked in method of like trying to get the disc as close to the basket as possible.
Yeah.
And had someone there, her caddy, whoever, been like, hey, listen, just get this 40 feet short of the basket right. And let's try to make a 40-footer to win this thing.
Then you're thinking a whole different shot. You're thinking more of a stall.
She probably throws
disc,
she probably throws a swarm super high up in the air and just because the wind also was a tail left to right. The wind's going to help it get over there. And I think so many people have this mindset of trying to throw shots under the basket. And that's normally fine, because if you shank it left or you shank it right, if you're aiming for the basket and you go left, right, short, or long, majority of the time, you have a 30 or 40 footer for birdie. But when we get to holes like this, where it's like, no, you actually have to play golf, that is where we see some players make the wrong shot selection, make the wrong decision.
Certainly.
And we've seen, the other winner, Ezra, we've seen him do this in the past too, where he's made some wrong shot selections down the stretch that is kind of biting him. And so it's like, to me, I agree. I think the play there was 40 foot for birdie. You make it, you win. You miss it, go into a playoff, you probably like your chances there too.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, let's talk about Ezra, obviously our other first-time winner. So Ezra Aderholt has finally entered the winner's circle in his 6th season on the Pro Tour. Crazy to think it's been that long. What do you attribute his recent success to most, after he's kind of treaded water for most of his career thus far? And are we too quick to judge young players that have promise but could need 5 or more years to fully develop into a winner on tour? I think a lot of times, we may have even done it early on our first topic, but a lot of times we kind of write people off after they've had a little bit of time to try and prove themselves. So, Dustin, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I just think that people develop at a different pace. Some people are prodigies and phenoms and do it quick, and some people take a lot of time. And these are extreme examples. But you look at Gannon Buhr, his first year on tour was 2021. He wins his first major the next year, and by a couple of years later, he has one of the most dominant seasons we've ever seen in Disc Golf Pro Tour history. But then you have someone like Matteo, who came second at Worlds in 2005 and didn't get his first one on tour until 2023. it took many, many years for him to be able to finally get a win. And again, those are extreme examples, but it just goes to show there is just like this different level of progression for people, just depending on who they are and how much time they put into the game and what their skills and all that jazz are. And then look, with Ezra, like pretty early on, we knew this guy had a phenomenal backhand and a lot of power. I mean, we saw that the very first year he was on tour, and he was able to get some top 20 finishes along the way. And we've kind of seen him progressively get better over time, in my opinion. I think, for one, when you look at his content, you look at everything else that he does, he clearly has a lot of work ethic and perseverance to want to grind out and get better. This dude was torn in his Prius. I mean, this guy clearly just wanted to be out there and play the best golf that he could. And what we really have seen is that his forehand has grown a lot over the years. He's more accurate. He's hitting the circles regulation more often. His scrambling is better than it used to be. He's throwing an OB less often than he used to. And then, yeah, the big one is his putting. Right? Like when you look at 2022, he was 81 from C1X. This year, he's 85. Also, his C2 putting is nasty. Like he's 33% from circle 2. That's crazy. That's way higher than where he was when he first started. And it puts him amongst the elite in the game from C2. And he's also hitting big putts in big moments. So it's like the quality of where he's hitting his putts at. Like he hit some nasty putts and he threw some clutch shots on 17 and 18 to bring it home. So like he's showing that grit and mental game as well.
Yeah, hard to find a place that he hasn't improved recently. Moses, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's two simple answers. I think Dustin obviously hit on that first one, which is going to be putting. In 2 years, he has improved, especially in C2. I mean, he was 87th in 2023, and he is 10th this year. And he was leading the field for quite a bit in C2 for the past few events. And I think it's just shown that he has become an elite putter through practice. And one of those stats that kind of sticks out to you is he has the longest total putting distance on tour this year. And granted, he's played a couple more events going over to Europe and everything. But, I mean, that is just insane for a guy that you would have never talked about his putting a couple of years ago. His C1X stats are tied with Nicholas Antela. He's better than Anthony Barella, better than Ezra Robinson, and better than Isaac Robinson. And you would have thought that every single one of those players are a better putter, maybe AB, he's improved quite a bit, are a better putter than Ezra. And I also think another thing to talk about is his maturity. His OB percent is nearly half of what it was last year, from 76 on tour to 13th, which is absolutely insane. His birdie percentage is up over 7%. He's 6th on tour. His bogey percentage is down. His double bogey percentage is down. All of those stats that are really important that we're looking for in terms of scoring are all improved in his favor. And that to me just shows that he's committed to the grind, as we already know. I mean, look at the guy physically, he's an animal. And I think one of those aspects is like the fact that he's gone over to Europe. 1 week, comes back the next week, goes back over to Europe the next week. Like he is committed to the pro tour lifestyle. And I think overall, this win was long due. He's had opportunities in the past with a few second place finishes, but I was really happy to see him pick it up.
Yeah, he certainly has made himself a mainstay on tour, and that's going to give you a lot of experience over enough years. Brodie, what are your thoughts on Ezra's improvement and how we've kind of looked at these young players so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a good perspective because I was there from pretty early on, seeing kind of his transition through different parts of his game and what he was working on and what he needed to work on. So as far as like his recent success, I think the biggest one right now in this small little window has been his putting. I think his putting was something that definitely was solid, but when it got to pressure, it kind of went away a little bit. And now he's much more solid inside of circle 1. And like Dustin was saying, he's making a lot of those circle 2 putts that players have to make to win tournaments. Other things that I've seen now, his forehand doesn't seem like an issue anymore. That was something that was kind of 50-50. He was developing it. It took him a while to develop it, a couple years, but now he's got distance with it and he feels comfortable and confident in throwing that, like we saw on literally hole 18, his second shot there, where maybe in the past he would have tried to throw like a touchy turnover instead of just ripping it over stable and just getting something in bounds. The distance, like I said, is there both on the back end and forehand. Another thing that he really struggled with was touch shots. He was not great throwing little touchy shots. We saw him miss those years ago. A lot of like little up shots from 200, 100 feet. He wasn't great, especially on the forehand, especially scrambling, getting him in Waco. Oh boy, I've seen some crazy shots from him. Those seem to be kind of completely gone away. And I think the shot selection, the execution has gotten really good. And the last thing I would say is, when are we too quick to judge? I mean, you go back and look at Preserve. if Corey Ellis and Gannon Burr aren't at that event, we have Carter Ahearns in a playoff with AB. It is really freaking hard to win on tour. You got to hope A, you play really well, and B, someone else doesn't have a tournament of their life, right? And it is very, very tough. And so there are a lot of players. We're going to start talking probably about Sullivan Tipton. When is he going to get his first one? We're going to start talking about all these other players because there are so many people now that are capable of doing it. It's just, can all the things line up for you? And Ezra this year, if you put yourself in that position enough times, eventually it's going to happen, and it happened here.
Certainly. And I think this year with those improvements, he's finally putting himself more consistently in those positions to win. Whereas, as I mentioned, it seemed like he was more treading around 20th, 30th place. Hunter, how do you see this working out for Ezra? And what do you think about how we judge players as a whole?
Well, I think there's two things going on here, right? There's the eye test and there's stats. Right. And I think that what we're actually seeing an improvement on is two words, one from Moses, one from Brodie, which is maturity and confidence. Because putting, yes, I agree. Eye test, his putting is phenomenally better. Stats, kind of negligible. I mean, if you look at last year, C1X putting, yes, he was 53rd, and yes, he's jumped to 24th. You know what that jump is? Less than 2% change. Basically nothing. Yes, C2, he was 12th last year, he's 10th this year, 0.18% change. But it's when those putts are being made versus when they used to be missed that I think is huge. And what we're actually seeing the biggest change in is actually, Brodie talked about this a little bit, his scramble percentage. It went from 35% up to 48%. We're also seeing his OB rate cut in half. We're seeing his fairway hits greatly increased, which is also leading to a greater C1 in regulation, a greater C2 in regulation, a greater park percentage. He's throwing the disc much better. I honestly think that what this is closer to is what we saw from Simon a few years ago, when Simon went from Mr. Simon line to, oh, I've been kind of injured or whatever, I'm gonna play a little more course management. I think that's what we're seeing from Ezra here, is he's been Mr. Distance. He's had the long throws, all of that. And I think now he's just making much better decision in his 6th year on tour. That's getting him in more positions to score. And now we're finally able to see the fruits of the labor that we've seen on the putting green actually matter. Because before, it doesn't matter if you're reining in 33% of your circle 2 putts if you're in 30th place. As for, are we too early to judge? No, you got to judge by what you see, and players can always change, but you got to judge by what's out there.
I think last year was the year, though, Hunter, that he made a huge improvement on his putting, because that's when he really, that offseason, he went away.
Yes, I'm just saying this is the year everyone's talking about it, because it's leading to actual performance.
Yes, correct.
But there wasn't it's not like all of a sudden his putting changed and that's what's making him perform better.
Yeah, we don't talk about Marweed's putting unless he's in contention, and then we're like, oh, this guy's putting is so good.
Hey, here's the take. Maybe Ezra just got really good at course management after all those practice rounds with Brodie for years.
There you go.
Could be. You taught him how to think golf.
He played high school golf, so he has the course.
Oh, so he's got the golfer's brain.
I think though he was fighting. Like, you go and look at some of the decisions. The ones that jump out at me is was it Jonesboro, where he tried to throw that straddle standing forehand over the par 5.
Yeah.
16. Yeah. I think, again, it goes back to the aggressive nature of players always trying to hunt for baskets. And I think a lot of times you have to do that, sure, but he's gotten good enough to where he's not having to do that all the time. And I think back then he was having to do that all the time, and it's going to bite you eventually. Yeah. Where now you can see him playing a little bit safer, a little smarter on some shots, especially when you know you're pretty good from circle 2.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think he also doesn't necessarily I felt like before he got into a panic mode a little bit more often. He felt like he had to make the hero shot then. Whereas what I saw this tournament was a more calmness of he felt like he could get the strokes back later. It didn't feel like, oh, it's now or never, which is kind of what we saw at that Jonesboro moment of if I don't get this up and down now, it's done, versus, okay, I'll take one here because I know I can birdie down the stretch, or I know I can play a little more aggressive X, Y, or Z. I think it's just coming with age.
Yeah, because there was a little panic in that whole 6 to 9 stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was able to say, "Hey, I started really good. No one else started 5 for 5. I'm okay."
Yeah, exactly.
I think he was able to do. I think that this is after tour life. I'm going to talk to him on that, so go watch that if you haven't. But I think him starting off hot and having a lead, I think that definitely calmed his nerves, because I wonder, had that stretch, had he started 3 through 5 or something and going cold through that stretch, I wonder how he would have handled that.
Yeah.
Being like not in the lead or being down 2, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if he would have pressed there.
Dustin, what'd you have?
I was just going to say, like, the other thing I feel like is that, you know, he didn't let 16 rattle him. Like, he came back and fired off 2 clutch drives on 17 and 18 right after having a real stinker on 16 that could have turned into some real trouble. And then the other thing I was going to say is I think that you're seeing him step putt less. Like, he's able to just keep his normal putt from a further range, less moving parts, less things to worry about. And I think that that's the reason why his C2 putting has stayed high, and it's probably going to stay high. It just seems like it's more something he can go to and not have to really worry about changing anything.
Yeah, for all you step putters out there, basically what he said was, instead of me having to practice 2 different types of putts, I now can do the same exact stroke just from different distance. And I think a lot of that has to do looking at how AB step putts, but Gannon's
a big one.
Gannon, Isaac, a lot of those guys, Ricky, Isaac sometimes does a little like step through, but basically you're doing the same motion, the same thing. And I think his step putt was different. And so now he's able just to practice the same stroke, and clearly it's working.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've talked a lot about this finishing its stretch at Pickard Park, and one of the fans actually submitted this topic. So they want to know, is this finishing stretch at Pickard Park, especially 17-18, is it the best on tour? And how would you score this course overall? Because I think it had a lot of buzz. So, yeah, what were your thoughts on the course and that finishing stretch, Moses?
Yeah, I mean, from every piece of media I've consumed, I think the pros describe Pickard Park as a fair course. And I think that's what a lot of people are asking. You know, there's a mix of open fairways, tight gaps that reward good shots, everything else. But you're not really going to see a whole ton of trees in the middle of a fairway, you know, OB that's incredibly tight or anything like that. And there's capable scrambling on a lot of these holes. I think for those reasons, the pros kind of enjoy it. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Gannon Burr and Gavin Babcock are locals to the area and have some input on course design. I think having pros be more, you know, impactful in DGPT courses is huge. I think that's a big thing. And I think the reason the finishing stretch was so great was because 17-18, you could have a variety of scores on. You know, they were the first and third most challenging holes on the entire course, you know, with 17 having that tight gap in the island green, 18 obviously having a tight gap onto a pretty far shot with an OB surrounded green. And what made them successful overall is because you could take that range of scores. We saw, you know, quite a few bogeys and worse, but we also saw some birdies on it as well. Saw that play out in FPO specifically, obviously with Caden Spurge picking up the win with that 1-stroke deficit on the hole. You know, Holland goes OB. Ezra had a few strokes to play with, so we didn't necessarily see that as much on MPO, but obviously FPO did. And the course overall gave us a nice mix on the leaderboard as well. I think that's one of the things that, you know, as a viewer, I'm looking for, is that the same players aren't always at the top. Both winners were first-time winners on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, as well as, you know, we saw Goose and Mason Ford both with their first top 10s of the season. You know, we saw Noah and Meinsma as well. You know, so a good variety of people. And obviously, you know, it was awesome to watch. I really had a good time as a viewer.
Yeah, I haven't really found many people that don't at least enjoy looking at the course. Brodie, how do you think it shook out?
Yeah, I mean, I love Pickard Park, you know, from the organizers to the fans, to just the location. It's one of those few, and you guys were there this year. It's one of those things where outside of hole 1 and 2, you really feel like you're on your like a private disc golf course. Even though there's a road right there and you're in a park, it really does kind of set itself away, and you feel that you are secluded. I love the feel of that. And I think they do a great job of adjusting the course. Initially, I had some maybe negative thoughts towards the changes to the course this year, but after playing it multiple days in the tournament, I think I like all the changes. I think they're all really, really great. And I think the finishing stretch, going to the question, is a great finishing stretch. You have a par 3 and 2 par 4s to finish it. Great scoring separation. You can birdie or bogey all 3 of those holes. And also, outside of the par 3, obviously, it's kind of just execute or don't execute. You have course management on holes 17 and 18. You have to decide, am I laying up? Am I throwing? Am I going for the green? You have to make a decision. And down the stretch, I love that. And I'll say this, hole 17, all it has is 2 trees, guys. You were there. There's 2 trees. There's a tree on the right side of the fairway, and then there's a tree left of the green. Those 2 trees have a massive impact on the type of throw you have to throw into that green.
Yep.
And so if the fact of We have these open courses and no one likes these open. If the fact that you can literally plant 2 trees and change the hole drastically, because we all can agree if those 2 trees are gone, that hole is cakewalk. That hole is so easy. The fact that those 2 trees exist gives me hope that in the future, course design for tournaments aren't that far away because they're only 2 trees away.
Well, yeah, you think about it. Tree number 1 is getting in the way of most drives, forcing people to throw those turnovers. And then tree number 2 is catching most of those turnovers. They don't turn enough. It's really where are the drives landing? Where are the approach shots going ahead? Like it's that simple. And yeah, it's a good point. They were beautifully executed where those trees were because they knocked down.
Super lucky, maybe. But
I don't. I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. But those things were knocking down discs left and right. Hunter, what are your thoughts on Pickard?
I think overall it's a great course. Yeah, I think that it's one of those where, as a disc golfer, I'm always excited to play park style courses, and I think it's a course that takes park style to the Pro Tour, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, you go in the woods some, but it's a lot of more open shots that uses trees to force certain shot shapes. It tastefully uses OB. It's funny because it has a lot of OB out there, but since it's so tastefully placed, it's not the same as when you're just on a golf course. Because there's tall grass, because there's woods, and it's lining that type of stuff. It's like, if you remove that stuff, this is basically like freaking Las Vegas Challenge, but having that there, all of a sudden, this is a perfect course, which I agree. I think it's phenomenal. To the actual finishing stretch, I think the 17 and 18 are phenomenal stretches, and I think that it's a lot due to the care and attention to details. I mean, even we were walking the fairway in the Creator Challenge, they were showing us where Gannon made Parks and Rec plant this tiny little tree because there was a gap that Gannon didn't like on 18 that you could get farther up the fairway, and he made it too easy. So they planted a little tree there to block it. And there's a lot of thought and attention to detail to making these holes be 2 of the hardest holes, the 2 hardest for FPO, 2 of the 3 hardest for MPO, which I think is a very important stretch. I think that what makes it so good is the forced carry, both on the approaches, because really 18, even though you could stay in bounds, most people had to go OB some way, shape, or form on your approach, which just makes you think. Even though it should be a very simple shot a lot of times, it makes you think. Some other courses that I think do this well is I think Maple Hill is another one that has a beautiful finishing hole 18. I actually want to thank USDGC is another one that comes to mind where hole 17, obviously you never know what's going to happen until there. And 18 is very tough in its own right. And both of all the holes that came to my mind when I was thinking of this, even European Open, going to be Worlds, had tight OB that you had to think about carrying a shot over on the final hole, which caused a lot of stroke separation. So yeah, I think it's up there with some of the best on tour.
Yeah, 18 being that tight is great because, like you're saying, I mean, we literally, as we were watching coverage, said like, oh, is this about to be a Corey Ellis situation? Because we thought of him on 18 juicing the forehand into the grandstands, where no matter how you cut it, getting up and down for par or whatever it is not easy. It's not easy until you're there next to the basket. So always makes things interesting. Dustin, how did you, where do you rank that stretch, and what do you think of Pickard Park overall?
Yeah, I mean, I like the finishing stretch of Pickard. I mean, as people have kind of already mentioned, you get like a little nervy tunnel shot par 3 on 16, then you get 2 phenomenal par 4s on 17 and 18, where you have to be good off the tee and you have to have a really good approach shot. The birdie percentage isn't out of control. Scoring separation's good. Double bogeys can come into play. Like, it really gives you a lot of drama at the end. Is it the best? I would say no. I personally like the finishing stretches at Winthrop and even Nokia for the European Open better, especially if you're using the bunker rule for 16 properly at the European Open. I think that those finishing stretches are a little better. Maybe that's just a little bit of nostalgia factored in and legacy, but I would probably put those higher. But I would put this one, better than, let's say, Waco, which I think 17, 18 at Waco are pretty nice, but I think this is better. And then, yeah, it's kind of up there with Maple Hill, in my opinion. As far as the course goes overall, I like the changes they made the hole 1 with the hazard carry. Like, I think that was a good change. And I think that throughout the course, you get some good variety. You get the cool water carry on hole 4. You get the hive and the island green on hole 5, and the kind of the culture that goes around that kind of separates it, kind of like the 8 holes at Maple Hill, for example. And so it kind of creates this community around it. I think they could make some changes to make the course better still, though. Like, for instance, imagine if hole 10, you had a force carry hazard. That way, any disc that get caught in those trees off the tee, you can't still wind up birdieing that par 5. Like, you're going to take a penalty. Like, I didn't really like that disc could get caught up there and you could still birdie the hole. So I think that there are some ways that you could beef it up just a touch here and there. But overall, it's already in a fantastic spot. And I think it's one of the better courses on tour. I enjoy watching it a lot.
Yeah, Brodie, you don't like the idea of the force carry there?
Dustin was close. The force carry should be for the second shot, not the tee shot. So
Fair.
you
Same
show that.
effect.
That's fair.
Yeah. So where like those hay bales are, all of that should be hazard or OB or
Okay.
whatever.
Dude,
Yeah.
So if you do hit trees early, now you're thinking, do I have
Yeah.
a shot to cover everything, or am I having to lay up and then throw?
That's basically what they're doing at the New London hole 18 now. The
Love that.
the hazard on hole 1 that Dustin mentioned, that made that hole a monster. Like hole 1 was hard because you got to go low ceiling under those trees, and if you get caught up, you're cooked, because even if you want to lay up, trying to lay up, like you can't really push the corner, you're in the hazard. That hole, I mean, it was taking people to double bogeys right to start their round. Like it was crazy.
Hazard was so smart there too, because had they done that as an island green and made all that OB,
Pace of play would have been a joke.
pace of play would have been bad. But I think also a lot of people would have like chipped. A lot of people would have played the double chip and then chipped over. But because there's that little hazard in there, you're like, oh, I'm okay.
Right.
I think that also caused a lot of people to throw that shot and go for it, which I love.
That hole was sick. Tasteful hazard, man. It is one of the keys. Little trees and hazard. It seems like that's what we learned from Pickard Park.
Yep.
But super memorable course. I really liked it. And when you're gonna have shorter par threes, giving them flavor like a nice water carry or that built up mulch green is just such a great way to make it memorable. Like all of a sudden you turn a hole that would have been filler into something that people are always going to remember when they play that course.
Last thing I want to say, how sick would it be if they did adopt this from golf and like Pickard got a major? I don't know what major they would get, but if Pickard got a major and they were like, all right, let's come in and freaking deck this thing out. And so now hole 5, instead of it being a 330-foot shot, it's now a 400-foot shot. They lengthen the course, they tighten the OB, they add more forced carries. Like that to me would make all of a sudden that course like as a major,
it would be pretty sick,
more exciting.
If USDGC had to move from Winthrop and they went with like a US Open identity, if their whole play was like, let's go to courses everybody knows and make them torture chambers.
I think that would, that course would be awesome if you just were like, let's make the winning score 12 under par for the week.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna happen, but on Simon's podcast, he was talking about how he might want to do that at the Preserve. He was like, "Oh, I'm considering just making it the hardest course on tour," which goes.
Hey, somebody's gonna do it.
He talks about it, but yeah, he was like, "I might just do a whole redesign."
I hope he switches, because initially he was like all about like birdie courses. He's like, we should have a par 3 course. I hope he does switch and sees the bright light that hey, disc golf's actually a lot more entertaining when you could get a 3 or a 7 on a hole and not a 3 or a 2.
Yeah,
I think he just wants people to suffer on this course.
Yeah. All right, let's get into our final topic here. Hunter and Dustin. Dustin, would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first. Yeah.
My rhetorical question I ask each week. All right, let's talk drugs, everybody. So the PDGA recently announced with short notice a new drug testing policy that will go into place at Worlds in a month. If you didn't see this is basically they were giving what looked like some kind of warning to all players that anybody could be tested and that cannabis is on that banned substance list. So what is your opinion on this entire situation and your best theory as to why it's happened so suddenly, and who is really behind this? Who stands to gain or lose from something like this? Dustin.
Yeah, this is a weird one. I don't know if I really have the right take on this. I'm going to try. I will say this, like, why is the PDGA just finding out about this now? I don't know if it's incompetence on their part or if it's the host is to blame for not relaying the information. Like, you feel like the PDGA should have control over it, and so they should have more information, but the fact that they didn't is really weird. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I will say at the very least, they did give people technically enough notice to get out of something if they were doing something with the 33 days notice. And that's adequate, at least for the whole Cannaboy thing. But outside of that, I'm not really sure. Now, as far as why is this happening, I actually couldn't really figure it out. Apparently, from what I understand, this has been something that could happen with WIFDIF in the past because they do adhere to WADA guidelines. But it just never really came up. And then I know the Finnish Disc Golf Association is technically a member of the Finnish Olympic Committee. And if that's the case, obviously WADA really does dictate the Olympics. And so with this being the first Worlds in Europe and underneath this Finnish Disc Golf Association, I do wonder, like, if they are trying to make a play at the Olympics long term and getting in line with Olympic standards, if that had something to do with it. But what's really weird about all what I just said is, if that's the case, why did we never hear about this at the European Open in Finland ever? Like, I don't know if it was there and it just never got brought up, or it's really a mystery for me. Now, as far as like just going forward with drug testing, look, I do think this makes sense. Like, having water, having anti-PED measures is a big part of many sports. It adds a layer of legitimacy and fair play. And I do think disc golf one day is going to get to that point where that probably does make a lot of sense. I think getting in line with WADA brings it in line with Olympic standards, which is kind of the standard to be in. And we've had a push for drug testing from at least some people since like 2020. So maybe we're just kind of going that route. But also, I think there is a chance that this is just a secret plot that Gannon Buhr, the most innocent person of all time, who has probably never touched a drug in his life, is like, let me go ahead and give myself one additional edge to win my first Worlds. I keep winning the other majors. I'm dominating, but I need that World. So all you guys out there who are doing stuff that I'm not, you're done.
Yeah, it could be big for Gannon Buhr, most certainly. Yeah, I mean, what you said just seems like where we're all at. Hunter, have you gotten any other kind of grasp on this?
No, I don't freaking know, man. I've tried. This feels like
crazy.
One of those situations where it happens a lot in the government, right? Or in life in general, where you see something happening, you're watching it happening, and you're like, I know someone's behind the scenes, pulling puppet strings, making this thing happen, but I'm not privy to the knowledge as to who, what, where, when, or why, right? Like, this makes no sense to me. I saw one theory out there that maybe this was a ploy to get Natalie Ryan tested. Natalie Ryan's not playing the event, so that's out the window. That one I was at least like, oh, okay, maybe there's some legs to that. The thing for me that I think really this boils down to is no matter what's going on or who's at stake or what the frick's going on, why is the PDGA finding out about this 33 days out from the World Championships? This is the real problem of this whole thing, is how do the PDGA not have full and total control over the biggest tournament in our sport, to the point that they can't even figure this out 60 days in advance? Maybe it's a play from the PDGA that they didn't know this was going to happen for so long, and they waited into the window to make sure they got everyone they wanted to get. But then for what? Get them for what? Fine them in Finland and send them back over here where they can play? Like, that doesn't even make sense. None of it makes any sense to me. I don't understand what's going on. I think what's the only thing that all connects the dots, that all makes sense to me, is that some organization, maybe a big sponsor, someone in Finland, wants drug testing implemented. The Finnish organizers said, we can't have this tournament here unless this is in play. The PDGA finds out about this 40 days out from the event, spends a week trying to figure out what the heck to do, and it's like, we can't do anything. The best thing we can do is if we send an email out to all these players, tell them, if you're smoking weed in the next 30 days, sorry, you might get fined, and just clear our hands and make sure everyone knows that we're not the ones that made this decision, in the classic PDGA move. So I have no idea what's going on. I can't find an angle that anyone's getting an advantage on this. So it's
a head scratcher. I honestly, I wrote in this question. I was like, by the time we get to the show, it'll be one of those things where everybody found the article that explains this all, and you guys are going to both have the correct take. I'm mind blown that, like, even with digging, there's just nothing there. All we have is the PDGA, warning. This is literally what it looks like. And it obviously seems like and this is classic PDGA verbiage, but it seems like hey, this isn't our fault, but just a heads up, guys, be careful out there. Like, it was like they're basically shouting, get off the weed, as Stephen A. Smith once said. So, I don't know what's going on. Is it somebody, you feel like it has to be somebody tied to the region they're playing in, like Connor was saying, like it feels like it would have to be,
but never happened at the European Open.
Why are we having a major the next weekend? Like, that's the big kicker. Like, why are there two majors there and only one's having this standard? It's very weird, very weird. And like, if the dust settles, I'm going to be so shocked if the dust settles here and it's a non-issue for like any player. Like, if it doesn't, something has to blow up out of this, and we're all just going to be waiting to see what happens. And when is the drug testing going to happen? We need whistleblowers that are going to tell us like when the testing is going on so we can be ready.
I just pieced together another conspiracy theory.
Okay.
So there was a comment section, or there was a comment on the Coffee Break podcast I do that was talking about how long cannabinoids, as they like to say, stay in your system is directly related to your body fat percentage. So they said their example was Ezra Aderhold could smoke a joint on Friday and then piss in a cup on Tuesday, and no one would ever know. but another player who they listed a player, but I'm not going to fat shame anyone. Another player, could have smoked a joint back in January and still not passed their test. So maybe this is actually a get healthy
thing.
This is a get healthy ploy from the PDGA.
It's a health initiative.
They were looking at it like, hey, we can't get big sponsors because not enough disc golfers look like athletes. We want everyone to look like Ezra Aderhold out there. That's the play. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, that's why you should be roiding them all up instead of like doing PED testing. We're going the wrong way.
Okay, I'm back out on that. It had some legs.
It did. I liked it. It did.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. Comment down below what are your best theories? Because at this point, we've got the disc golf's greatest minds here, and nobody can figure it out. So yeah, we'll have to see. Well, anyways, Dustin, congrats. You're our winner tonight.
Yep.
Thanks
I'd like to thank my first place at the Drug Education Council charity event as how I was able to get this done.
Dang.
Excellent.
He doesn't even know.
You know what's crazy about this trophy is you would have no idea this has anything to do with disc golf. It just says Drug Education Council first place.
It looks like you had to go through a program.
First place in drugs.
Yeah,
that's right. Program.
Can anyone tell me what the acronym of DARE stands for?
Drugs against. No, wait. Crap. What was it?
Good trivia question.
Drugs are really evil.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know.
Something about drugs and education. I don't know.
Guess you're just gonna have to look it up.
All right.
Drugs and something education. There was this one thing my school had called SWAT, which was students working against tobacco.
Drug abuse resistance education.
Abuse resistance. AR.
And that was your fun fact of the day.
Boys, no one remembers it.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
In the middle is another round, the one behind all of this.
Oh.
Infinite possibilities. Oh, only the best drugs.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want to submit a topic, go ahead and scan the QR code. Not sure what exactly is going to happen next week because there's going to be some funky business going on in Foundation that you'll hear about at some point.
Oh yeah,
so
what the heck
you may get a live show, you might get no show.
I think you get a live show.
You'll probably get a live show next week.
I mean, the people know they know this for certain, so this isn't spoiling anything. Me, Trevor, Brodie, Gary in one spot. And there's at least one more person that can fill in the fourth, all to do a live show.
We'll see what happens. You won't want to miss it. Be there next week. Greatest episode of all time. See you then.